What's up, guys? This is Kephas.
So I recently watched this incredible documentary called The Remarkable Life of Ibelin. It's something that's been making the rounds in the WoW community lately because it's actually about a WoW player. It's about this guy named, his character name was Ibelin. His real name was Motz, but he had a degenerative muscular condition. Duchenne's, I believe is what it's called. It's actually why there's a promotion right now to donate to charity to help fight Duchenne's. It's in his honor, as I understand it. And so it's this incredible story about this kid who is going through life with this condition and having a lot of trouble, getting through life in a world that he's having a hard time functioning in because he has this condition that is progressively getting worse. And unfortunately, it's pretty well known, there's a memorial devoted to him in the game. He's passed on. And it's just about his life. And the remarkable thing about his life is that much of his life was lived inside of World of Warcraft. And while he's unable to connect and function in the real world in the way that everyone else is, in World of Warcraft, as he put it, he felt like his chains were broken. Every time he'd log in, he would run just to experience running, because he was bound to a wheelchair. And it was just this incredible story about how he connected with others in the game and how he helped people and how he wanted to matter, and how he found meaning in World of Warcraft, how the game provided that for him. And I gotta tell you, I'm not somebody that tears up at documentaries very often, but this one, it hit deep, man. It hit real deep for me as a fellow disabled player. It resonated with me on such a deep level, and I slept on it and I thought about it a lot, and I just kind of wanted to share why it resonated with me and share a little bit of my experience, because I know I'm not the only person, disabled or not, I'm not the only person that this story would resonate with. And so first off, if you haven't seen the documentary, I highly recommend it. If you have access to Netflix, you have a friend that has Netflix, I recommend you check it out. It's definitely a tearjerker. It's definitely a beautifully sad, but inspiring story, and just an incredible human being, beautiful human being. As someone who, I fortunately, I don't have any degenerative condition. I don't have any muscular condition. I was born with ocular atrophy, which left me very nearly completely blind. And I'll say there are people that are much worse off in terms of visual impairment than me, but I'm pretty visually impaired. I'm blind completely in one eye, and I have like 20/400 vision in the other. I don't have any depth perception. I'm incredibly nearsighted. And so that's created a lot of challenges for me. And I don't like to cry about it. I try to make the most of it, and I don't want to, be a burden or anything, or pity me, which is something that I guess, in the documentary, it's something that Ibelin said, like, I don't want anybody to pity me. He was very secretive about his condition, actually. And most people didn't know for a very long time that he even had a condition, because he felt that way. And I understand that feeling very well, although I tend to be much more open about mine, just because I've dealt with it in different ways, But and so I was born with this condition, and one of the hardest things was being different, and being in a world that you're treated different, you're viewed differently. And it's not because, like, I've learned this as an older person, as a teenager, I felt a lot more annoyed by people. These days, I've learned to show grace and understanding and compassion to people that don't necessarily understand. It's not people's fault that they don't understand what it's like, and I'm actually thankful that most people don't understand what it's like to have a disability, because that means they're not suffering with it, in the same way, I guess. And so, I've always said that it's as hard to explain to a sighted person what it's like to be blind as it would be to explain to a blind person what it's like to have sight. And so I try to show grace as long as people are respectful. I always try to show understanding that people may not, they mean well, even if their attempts are not useful particularly. I think that something that I've always felt in my life is that I live in a world that wasn't made for me. It was made for people that can see. And it's something that I feel in many areas of my life to this day. When you live in a fast-paced society where people are driving and, people drive to get anywhere and everywhere and you can't. And growing up in school and, I experienced a lot of bullying. I experienced a lot of embarrassment. Would carry around these giant books that were like 4 times the size as everybody else's book. And I had all this equipment and just, I resented feeling different. And that was always a challenge. And so I would try my best to function as normally as possible. Most people that I know that are disabled, we don't want to be pitied. We don't want to be patronized, because we really just want to be treated like we're everybody else. Because like there's more to a disabled person than their disability. And I think that what most of us really want is to find people that see us beyond that, that understand that is there, and that does bring challenges. And so please be understanding, but also see us for more than just that, I guess. And I think that's something that Ibelin struggled with in his life, and something that made WoW feel so special to him, because in there he wasn't someone bound to a wheelchair. He was him. He was standing alongside everybody else in the game. And I think that's one of the reasons why a game like WoW is so appealing to so many people, and why even like the locking things behind money, it can be frustrating, because I think that a lot of people like the idea that we're all starting from the same place, that no matter what your outside life is like, in here we all have the same opportunities. And I think that that's one of the reasons why people don't like the Brontosaurus mount. I know I'm kind of getting on different topics here, but that's why, is because for a lot of people the game is a place where you can have equal footing with everybody. Everybody's the same. Everybody has the same opportunities and access as everybody else. Just a thought. But regardless, I think that for me, like going through life and kind of getting into adulthood, going through high school, and all of my friends and everybody I knew was starting to drive, and they were going places, and some of them were working, and I felt like I was falling behind, and I felt like I was like not connecting with the world the way everybody else was. Everybody else was integrating into society, and suddenly I felt like, well, everybody is like, if society is a river and everybody's jumping in and just getting swept up and moving on with society, I was always outside. I was always standing on the outside of the river watching everybody else flow downstream, and I was just there watching. And that's how I've always felt in life, is that I've always been on the outside. I've always been disconnected from the world and from society, and integrating comfortably in society has always been a challenge, and so that's something that I can relate to very much, and so as I'm going through high school and trying to navigate life and trying to fit in, and having a lot of trouble doing so, and like starting to feel like a lot of my life is out of reach, and so I graduated in 2004, which is actually the year that World of Warcraft came out, but I never knew about it until about 2006. And so I was struggling a lot at that time. I like I said, I couldn't drive, didn't really have any access to public transportation, and I felt cut off from the world. I wasn't finding work. I went to college. I wanted to be a minister, and so I was going through Bible school, but I was doing it correspondence. I didn't go to college because that seemed out of reach at the time. But then I went to a community college to get a second degree. I was going to be a graphic designer. And after a year, I had to drop out because I didn't have reliable transportation anymore. And so that kind of just stopped happening. And that was a very big setback for me, and so I'm not really sure what to do. So I continued on in ministry training at home. But I wasn't really doing much else either. I would go to church and like all my friends would be getting together and like I'd be never even knowing that they got together or that there was an event happening because I just was kind of taken for granted that I wouldn't be there. I can't drive. So, and so I remember that like there was a point where I was very sad, and that was what life was like for me. That's what I knew. And that was kind of the state I was in when I started playing World of Warcraft. I really got into it. It was like, wow, this is amazing. Just like, wow, I'd never seen anything like World of Warcraft before. And long story short, I joined a guild, a very large guild. It was actually Scott Johnson's guild from the Instance podcast. And the guild's called Alea Iacta Est, or AIE, on Earthen Ring. I joined their guild. And they were a pretty big guild. Back then, you didn't have to have, there was no guild limit cap. The guild far exceeded the cap. It broke the interface. And then they added the cap, and so it was 1,000 player cap on guilds, and so we had to create multiple guilds and divide people up, and then we had this add-on called Greenwall where we could connect. Anyway, so I'm part of this guild, and I made a lot of friends there. People that I raided with, people that were officers in the guild. I actually became an officer, eventually a Praetorian. Member of the WoW community for AIE, which is like a high up officer, and it's because I spent so much time in the game and would just be involved, and it gave me a sense of connection that I hadn't experienced anywhere else in my life up to that point ever. I felt integrated into something, and I felt connected with people from different walks of life, from different parts of the world, and I made genuine friends that I would hang out with and talk to every single day. And I remember all of them still. They're still in my heart, even though a lot of them have moved on and I've moved on and life has changed so much since then. But I connected with people in a very meaningful way. And I think about them a lot. I do. I even raided with Scott Johnson for a while. I even got to know him, and he's a great guy. I know Kyvax. Like when I say I know him in the game, right? I raided with them in the game. I know Randy Jordan Kyvax. Like another really nice guy. And I'm glad to have known them. I'm glad that I know them. I got to hang out with them and play the game with them, and also other people that were closer friends than that, that I hung out with on a daily basis. I think of, I don't know if any of them will ever see this, but I think of Lank Theris, a very close friend in WoW who taught me how to play a paladin and got me into raiding and brought me in to be an officer and always rooted for me and always encouraged me. And a very close friend. I think of Aludra and Alakaz and Tatsuki and Hikimori, and so many other people that I can think of that meant the world to me. Some of them have even passed on themselves, and there are so many that I've met. Revan Geek, Hunts the Wind, and just I've gotten to know so many people through World of Warcraft, and I haven't talked to some of them in 10 years, and I still remember them because they were my first friend group where I felt equal and respected me and meant the world to me. WoW saved my life. It came at a time when I needed connection so deeply. World of Warcraft came and it provided that for me. It provided a sense of meaning in a time where I felt lost and I felt alone. And even though I was still home, I wasn't by myself. I was in my room. I was locked away from the outside world in many ways, but I wasn't, because I was connecting with people in the virtual world. And that might sound crazy to some people. People I think people are coming more and more around to it as we become more digital. But I think that that's one of the areas where I relate to Ibelin so much, because like him, I found meaning in something that a lot of people would say is a waste of time and is meaningless, and that you can't make friends and you can't have bonds with people that you never meet in person. That's not true. It's not true at all. You absolutely can, and I did with many people, more than even the ones I mentioned, and so that's definitely something. But also just with Ibelin, I think that the thing that really hit hard the most is that as he was getting near the end of his life, he wanted to know that he mattered. He wanted to know that he did something meaningful in his life, and in World of Warcraft, he was a listening ear. He helped people through life. He listened to their problems, dealing with his own. He still was there for others. And in a video game that's about gear chasing and stats and min-maxing and Mythic Plus and all this stuff, here you have a guy that's doing some of that for sure, but more so is it's this other world. It's this social experience, and he's forging these connections and having real meaningful impact on people's lives. And I don't want to go into too much detail because I recommend watching the documentary, but so much so that when he passed on, they showed up at his funeral, countries away, and he meant a lot to people. And that's I'm so thankful, and that he knew that when the end came, that he found meaning in life in World of Warcraft, and more so in the people that he played World of Warcraft in. And so that's, I think that it's important that people understand something, is that you can find meaning and purpose in anything. It doesn't matter if it's something as trivial as a video game. It doesn't matter if it's a D&D group. It doesn't matter if it's baseball team. It doesn't matter where there are people to forge bonds with. Where there is community, there's a chance for meaning. And anything that matters to you and fulfills you can be a source of meaning in your life. And that includes the video games. Video games are only a waste of time if you don't enjoy the time you're spending in the video game. Otherwise, no, it's not a waste of time at all. And so I think that Ibelin's story kind of embodies that, where that made his time mean so much more, and like I said, I can relate to that so much, because even to this day, I still feel like one of the primary ways that I connect with people is through video games. That's why I do this channel. Whether it's in the game, hanging out with different people, or it's talking about video games with people, it's a way that I feel like I can connect, because there's so little that I can do in the outside world, but there's so much that I can do in a video game. And that's something that hit very deeply. And I think that for me, I've come to realize that that's okay. That's not a Band-Aid fix. That's a life to live. And there can be a lot of good done even in the virtual world. I guess for me, I'm on the other side of that part where I personally have found meaning in life so much, and part of it's through the channel, part of it's through my personal growth. Things that were at one time out of reach. It's not all bad out in the real world either. I have an incredible family. I have an incredible life outside of the game, outside of video games as well now. But a lot of that came from the growth that took place for me inside of World of Warcraft with my friends. And I owe so much of my life to not really the game, because it could have been another game, it could have been any game really, but to the people that I met in the game. And I am thankful that the game did provide a space for people to be social, and that's why I still value that aspect. And I hope that people know that even though it's not as necessary now, the game can still be a very positive social experience. There are people in the game that you might come across that, it may be a chance meeting, but they can become very special people in your life. And I think that if you can remember that, and you can remember that the people that you play the game with, whether it's in an LFG dungeon or it's someone you meet in a guild or whatever it is, they really are real people on the other side of that screen, and they live a life that you don't know about. They have challenges that you don't know about, and by God, they matter, and you matter, and everybody matters. Whether you believe that or not, you do. And so while it is a game, and we're all chasing the carrot, we're all buying the mounts in the shop, at the end of the day, it's a place where people congregate. And while that can create anxieties in and of itself, and that can create conflict, it can also provide meaning and community and connection. And WoW is a beautiful place for that, and I've experienced that firsthand, so much so that it overshadows the negative, for sure. And so WoW has had a profound impact on my life, and the people that I've met. And so I just wanted to share that, with people. And I can say that, like, I recommend watching Ibelin's documentary, and learning his story, and also sharing my experience as well, and how World of Warcraft has impacted my life and how it's made my life better in many ways. And so I think that's such a deep part of why I feel such a connection with the game, because like when I take a break and I come back, it's like coming back home, because there was a time where I think I spent more time in WoW than I did in real life. And you matter. You matter. I don't care if you suck at the game or not. I don't care if you have friends out of the game. I don't know where you are in your life, but you matter. And you need to know that. So yeah, and be kind to each other, be decent, treat people with respect, and show kindness and show compassion, even in the game. Even though you don't see their face, even if you don't see how they react, remember that the next person you meet could become your best friend. You never know. So yeah. Anyway, I guess that's it. So I want to go and go play the game, I think. So thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you guys on the next one.